All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Tom Martin. I am the Dean of the College of Business. Welcome to our Distinguished Speaker series. We are very excited for our speaker today. And we're going to, Ms. Fawbush is going to talk for about a half hour. Then we're going to do Q&A. I'm going to ask her some questions. Then I'd like to turn that over to you to ask some questions as a follow-up. And so please be thinking about those things as she's talking. I appreciate each of you being here. To introduce Suzanne Fawbush, I have invited the 14th president of EKU to do that. President McFadden is a Johnson County native of Kentucky. He is a first-generation student. How many of you are first-generation students? Raise your hand. So continue to be a significant number of students. And he worked in the private sector for a long time with AT&T, but he came back to serve the college that served him so well. And so please help me welcome President David McFadden.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Great to be here in the College of Business today. And this is such a great part of the year. The speaker series that the College of Business does has brought some amazing individuals back to EKU. For many of them, the first time they've been back in 20 years or 30 years or 40 years, to show them that we're continuing to live up to that expectation of being the school of opportunity here at EKU. Today is no different than that, but today is perhaps a bit more special as I have a chance to introduce the speaker today. Suzanne Fawbush, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her and her past and her accomplishments. She's going to tell you a little bit about how you can emulate some of the things that she has done in order to be as successful as you want to be career-wise. But I'm inspired by her work that she does to give back to Eastern Kentucky University. So first and foremost, she has become a great friend. She has become a great confidant, and she has been one who is giving back to the university. Suzanne is a native of Kentucky, from just down the road in London, and so it's funny. It's a small world. As we had a chance to visit back a few months ago, it's such a small world as we connect together and all the pieces that weave us Kentuckians back together in the work that we do. She is a graduate of this college. She has a BBA in marketing from the College of Business here at Eastern Kentucky University, and was EKU's first alum to go on to Columbia Law. So she went to the Distinguished School, the College of Law in Columbia, practiced law in the corporate environment for Breed, Abbott, and Morgan for 8 years. And during that time, she worked on corporate acquisitions and transactions. She has done many amazing things, and she's going to have a chance to share some of those things with you. She specialized in international secured financing transactions, general corporate governance issues, and a number of other things. She also continues to work today with MAI Capital Management. And the one thing that has inspired me the most about her is that she's been committed to paying it back. She came to Eastern Kentucky University on a scholarship, and so I hope that one of her deep passions today is being the chair of our foundation board. And as she leads in that area, we are looking forward to really some historic success and bringing those who have given so much to Eastern back to giving back to our great institution. So we are passionate about that. She truly believes that education changes lives, and that is what we believe and subscribe to at Eastern Kentucky University every day. We are so proud of the work that she has done. We are so proud for what she has done to change lives, but we are most excited about what we have a chance to do together next, Suzanne. So we are grateful to have you here today to speak to these students about how they can apply themselves and invest in themselves through education and opportunity. Ladies and gentlemen, Suzanne Fawbush.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, President McFadden, for those kind words. And you said so many things that you're probably going to hear a repeat of here. So I apologize for that. But thank you for that kind introduction. And thank you to Dean Martin for asking me to be the distinguished lecture speaker this year. I'm very honored to be here. I just was able to speak to many of you at a reception, and it's so exciting to speak to students. That's really one of my favorite things about coming back. Thanks also to the professors that are here today. I met some of you at the reception. I thank you for being here. Thank you to the admin staff that are here, especially my friends in development who I know well and think the world of. I also want to thank my husband, Chris, who came all the way from New York City to hear this lecture, as well as 4 dear friends from my EKU days. They're all EKU alums. Raise your hands so people can see you. Yes, anyway. And they came back today. And most importantly, I want to thank the students that are here today. So thank you so much for coming. Before I begin, I'd like to get an idea of who's in the audience. Can I see a show of hands of freshmen? Couple, thank you. Sophomores? Yes, I met a lot of sophomores at the reception. Juniors? Great. Seniors? Yes, seniors in the house. Thank you. All right, thank you for coming. Dean Martin asked me to give this lecture and talk about how I came to Eastern and what made my career path possible. When he first asked me to speak, I was a little uncertain I would have anything worthwhile to say to you today, but you will be the judge of that. What I do believe is that I have a lot in common with many of you here today. And let me begin by telling you a little bit about myself. And President McFadden told you some things, but I was born in Bell County in Pineville, Kentucky, way up in Eastern Kentucky. Grew up in London. I went to school at Laurel County High School back when there was only one. My father was a coal miner and a construction worker. My mother did a variety of things. She was a butcher. She sold real estate, and she was a deputy sheriff at one point. Neither of my parents went to college. I was a good student when I was young, and I really loved school. I always said I was going to go to college, and I'm not sure why, because it really wasn't discussed in my home. And my teachers, even in high school, really didn't talk about college to us. My guidance counselor in high school, whose main job and passion was the boys' basketball coach, never met with me once or ever talked to me about college. And I'm not sure if any of you had a similar experience with your guidance counselor, but there wasn't much guidance there. My parents didn't encourage me to go to college, I think mainly because they didn't go and they didn't know how they would pay for it. But I knew that I would have to find a way. So back then, now you have to remember that this was a time before the internet, or as my daughters call it, the dark ages. So we really didn't have access to information about applying to college or financial aid or things like that. So I wasn't sure how to go about going to college. But at that time, the military used to come to our high school and they would administer these things called battery tests. Do they still do that? I don't know. Do you guys have to take tests that the military does? Good. Anyway, they used to come and it was mandatory, and we'd have to go on a Saturday morning, and they would show us a bunch of shapes of parts of machines and tools, and we would have to take a test on it. And I was so terrible at these tests that my test scores indicated that I would never graduate from high school. So it was very discouraging to me. But the good thing that I learned from taking these battery tests was I found out that the military would take you even if you failed the battery test. And if you went into the military for 4 years, they would pay for college for 4 years. So I was so excited because now I had my way to go to college. I thought I would go in the Air Force because I had a brother that had been in the Air Force during the Vietnam War. So I was all set to go. In one of life's many twists and turns, however, my parents, during my junior year and senior year of high school, were building a log cabin on a lake in Laurel County. By the way, my parents would have done great on these battery tests because they could build or fix anything. You could give them a box of old spare parts, a couple of tools, and they could build you a washing machine. But I did not inherit that gene, so I was never able to do that. The people that my parents were building a log cabin for just happened to be 2 professors from Eastern, and their names were Bill and Marion Burge. Now, Bill and Marion taught here for decades. Bill was a history professor. Marion taught nursing. They loved Eastern, and they believed very strongly in the value of a college education. So I had gotten to know them over the time my parents were building the cabin because, as I said, I was useless at building anything, but they would make me come and watch them. And Bill and Marion would often be there, and I would end up just talking with them. And so when they asked me, well, where are you going to college? And I said, I'm going into the Air Force. And they said, why? And I said, well, I don't have any money. And they said, well, you should apply to Eastern, and you should apply for a scholarship. So Bill and Marion Burge were the first people that really had a conversation with me about college and said, you should do this, and this is how you do it. So this was my ladder of opportunity, and I took it. I applied for an alumni scholarship here at Eastern, which I received, and that together with working as a waitress at Arlington Country Club, some other scholarships and grants, and eating a lot of peanut butter and Campbell's soup allowed me to afford to go to Eastern. Because at that time, you did not have to be on the meal plan. My roommate is here, and I think we did have an illegal hot plate at one point. But anyway, my 4 years at Eastern were an amazing experience for me. College was everything I thought it would be and more. I loved meeting new people. I loved living on campus. Back then, everybody lived on campus. I met some students today who don't, and it's just amazing to me that, we just all assumed we'd always live on campus. We lived in Telford at that time, which was the new dorm. That just kind of puts everything in perspective for you right there. And it was a girls' dorm. It was just a wonderful 4 years. I loved learning. I did well in my classes, and I liked most, not all of them, but most of them. I was a history major, business minor until my junior year, and then I switched and became a marketing major and graduated with a BBA. I was active on campus in AD Pi sorority. These are my sorority sisters here, some of them. I was in academic clubs and totally into sports, because when I was here in 1982, Eastern won the National Football Championship. We went to the game. It was all great. My Eastern education widened my worldview, and it gave me the confidence to believe that I could do or be whatever I wanted to be. It was a transformative 4 years for me, and it prepared me for the next part of my life. I had been thinking about becoming a lawyer for many years, but once again, I had the same problem of I had no money, and I also didn't really know how to apply for law school. At that time, Eastern did not have advisors and other faculty resources the way you guys do today. So I really hope you take advantage of them, because it was much harder to figure things out back then. So what did I do? I went to the library on campus. I checked out a book that was probably several years old, but that's all I had. And it was called The Best Law Schools in the Country. So I mailed away for applications, and I applied to several schools. I wasn't sure I would get into any of them, but I believe my Eastern education gave me the confidence to try. I was rejected by Harvard and Yale, but I was accepted at Columbia Law School in New York City, and at the time it was number 5 in the country. This was a huge turning point for me. Columbia Law School was one of the best in the country, but it was very expensive, and I had no way to pay for it. Also, it was in New York City, and it was intimidating to think about moving so far away from home. I also had applied to UK law school, and I had gotten in, but now I had a choice to make. I could go to UK, which is a good law school, less expensive, closer to home, but it wasn't as well known or as prestigious as Columbia. So I could go to Columbia, but then I would have to move to New York, and then I would have to go into debt, and I wouldn't know anybody there. So I stepped way, way out of my comfort zone, and I decided to go to Columbia. I did receive some aid, but I took on considerable debt, and it took me several years to pay it off. The decision to attend Columbia was the right one for me, but my first experience there was not a good one. I'd never visited Columbia before, and again, it's before the internet. I didn't even know where it was, except the address was New York City. Well, it turns out it was in Harlem, and it was not in a very good neighborhood. So 2 of my sorority sisters, one of them is here, again, my roommate, they drove me in my car to New York City with all my possessions. After the first or the second trip of carrying my boxes into the dorm, we came back to my car to find out that it had been broken into. that somebody had come and they drilled a hole next to the trunk and they had popped it. I was very upset. And then I started looking through to see what they had stolen, and I realized they hadn't taken anything. So I had nothing of value even to thieves. So that upset me more. So when it was time for my friends to leave, which was that afternoon, I stood on the sidewalk and I watched them drive away in my car, which my trunk was tied together now with a piece of rope, because otherwise the trunk would be up for 800 miles. So they're driving away, it's flopping up and down. And I remember thinking, I am all alone, and I was so scared, and I thought, what have I done? My classes at Columbia were difficult, but I did well. At first, I was intimidated by my classmates because most of them seemed like they'd all gone to these schools that I had only heard of, which were quite well known, and they were really smart. The first question people in graduate school usually ask you is, where did you go to college? And so when I would say Eastern or EKU, they would say, where is that? And I would explain. And some of them would ask more questions, and sometimes the conversation just dropped. It was difficult not to be defensive at times, but I just kept reminding myself that Eastern was as good as any of the schools my classmates went to. It must be, because we're all in the same school now. My classmates came to be my friends over those 3 years, and I was elected to be president of our student body our last year, and I spoke at our law school graduation. After law school, I stayed in New York City, where I still live. I was a corporate attorney for several years in a firm of over 100 attorneys. I got married to my wonderful husband, Chris, and we have 4 daughters that we raised in the city. I later worked in corporate finance as a chief administrative officer, and most recently as the head of corporate real estate for a nationwide wealth management company. My education, starting with my 4 years at Eastern and then my law degree, equipped me to be adaptable to life's changes. That's why I believe getting a 4-year degree is so important. It's not just about your major. It's not about your first job. Your education is preparing you for your life immediately after graduation and your future choices that you can't even imagine today. It's preparing you now to have more and better choices later. Okay, well, that's enough about me, probably more than enough. So let's talk about you. I would first like to acknowledge what each of you has already accomplished just to be sitting in that seat today. You are here today at Eastern working on your 4-year degree, so you are already on your own road to success. For many of you, you may have had to overcome many difficulties just to be here today. Maybe you had parents that supported your decision to go to college, but they didn't have the money to help you go, and you're taking on debt. Or maybe you're the first in your family to go to college, and your parents think that it might be better for you to get a job making $20 an hour at FedEx. Maybe some of you have family that's been fractured due to alcohol or drugs, and you were raised by grandparents or other family members. Whatever your circumstances, you are here now. And I want to both congratulate you and encourage you to continue your education and obtain your degree. While there is no magic formula to success, and everyone's trajectory is different, I've observed some common characteristics in successful people that give you a good shot. And I'd like to focus on 3 today: hard work, perseverance, and self-confidence. The first is hard work. What does it mean to work hard in college? It means to treat college as a dress rehearsal for life. You have to show up. You have to attend your classes, be on time, and participate. I'll say that again. You have to attend your classes, be on time, and participate. Don't underestimate the value of that discipline, because it will serve you well for the rest of your life. You must also do the work in all your classes, even the ones that you're required to take and you don't particularly like. College assignments are not like a salad bar where you get to pick and choose the ones you want to do. Do your assignments to the best of your ability, and if you don't understand it or you can't complete it on time, talk to your professor before it's due. They are here to help you, and they really want you to succeed. I didn't understand that when I went to college, that the professors had chosen this as their life's work, so they really want to help you. And remember, when you look good, they look good. Hard work also means going the extra mile. Go to events or lectures your college is having, or maybe your professor suggests, like this one. Go early and see if you can help, or stay after, see if there's anything you can do. Get involved and volunteer for events happening on campus. It might mean a health fair, or I know there's an event this afternoon on financial literacy. It might be Giving Day, which we just had last week. Events like these can always use extra help, and you might just enjoy it and learn something. Also, you might never know who's focusing and watching on what you're doing. Someone who exemplifies hard work is my favorite doctor in New York City, who just happens to be from Kentucky. Her name is Patricia Yarberry Allen, which I think Yarberry is such a Kentucky name. She was born in Adair County, Kentucky. She was the oldest of 6 children. Her home had no indoor plumbing, and she started school in a one-room schoolhouse. She had to work all through high school and put herself through college. She started out at Lindsey Wilson Junior College, and she eventually graduated from the University of Louisville. She could only take a few classes each semester because she had to work so many hours. So it took her 7 years to graduate college. 7 years. And then she applied for medical school. She got into the University of Louisville Medical School, but she had to continue to work to pay for medical school. So her grades suffered, but her enthusiasm did not. On Saturday nights, she would just show up at the emergency room at the hospital around 11 o'clock, and she would stay till 2 or 3 in the morning. She said she did this because she knew the ER was always shorthanded on Saturday nights. And when she did it, she learned things, and she liked to help out. One night, she was pushing a woman on a gurney to the operating room at 2 a.m., and there was someone standing there who was usually not in the ER at that time. She recognized him because he was the chairman of the University of Louisville Medical School Department of Surgery, a man by the name of Hiram Polk. She said the students thought he walked on water. He did not recognize her, and he asked her who she was and why she was there pushing this woman to the OR. She told him she was a second-year medical student, and she liked to come to the hospital on Saturday nights to help out. He asked her if she didn't have a life, and she said she did, and this was it. He was so impressed by her that he became her mentor for the remainder of medical school. He then helped her get a residency at the Cornell Hospital in New York City, which is one of the best hospitals in the country. And it's a hospital that normally only took students who had graduated from Ivy League medical schools. For the past 40 years, Dr. Allen has been a successful OB/GYN in New York City, and she still is. As a matter of fact, I saw her last week. Her hard work through high school, college, and medical school, as well as that going the extra mile and volunteering at a hospital, changed her life. Now, you might be thinking, well, she got lucky that one night that the chairman of the Department of Surgery was there. However, she had been volunteering at this hospital for countless Saturday nights, both before and after, and he never came back again. She wasn't volunteering with the expectation of getting something out of it. She was volunteering to help and to learn, and it paid off. There's an old saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. It's not a coincidence. Work hard and excel in your classes, and it will pay off. The second characteristic is perseverance. That's a continued effort to do something difficult despite failure or opposition. It's when you get knocked down, but you get up and you keep going. What does that look like in college? It's when you study really hard and you still don't understand statistics, like I never did, but you keep going to class. It's when you work really hard on a paper and you get a C on it, but you make an appointment to meet with your professor and ask how you could do better next time. It's when you have to work part-time when you're going to school because you have to help pay for your tuition. And there's sometimes not enough hours in the day to work and study, but you just keep doing both. Maybe this sounds familiar to some of you in this room. It certainly did to me. In all these cases, perseverance is when you continue to keep putting one foot in front of the other day after day, and you keep going. An example of perseverance is a name that you're going to know, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah was born to a poor single mother in rural Mississippi, 1954. Her mother left her soon after she was born with her grandmother, and her grandmother raised her for 6 years. After that, she shuttled back and forth between her mother in Milwaukee and her father, who was in Nashville. And she had an unstable childhood. Despite all that, she applied for and won a scholarship to Tennessee State University, where she studied communications. After college, she got a job at a local TV station as a news anchor, which was a prestigious job. Soon after that, she was asked to go to Baltimore and also be a news anchor there. That job only lasted a year, and they fired her because they said she got too emotionally invested in the stories. Sometimes when people lose a job or you get fired or have a setback, they just give up. They think the person who fired them must know a lot more than they do, and they must not be good at this. They just don't have what it takes. But Oprah persevered. She took a job at a failing talk show in Baltimore, and she worked there for 6 years until it became a success. At that point, she was noticed by someone in Chicago at a local TV station, and once again, they gave her a failing talk show, which she turned around in 1 year, and they named it the Oprah Winfrey Show. And we all know what happened after that. She was on TV for 25 years. She was the queen of daytime TV, and she created an empire. Now, she dared to dream a dream, an impossible dream for a poor child born in Mississippi in 1954. But she acted on those dreams, and she persevered. So persevere in your own dreams, whatever they are. The last characteristic I want to talk to you about is self-confidence. Now, self-confidence is a belief in oneself or one's ability and the potential to overcome challenges. I do want to point out that self-confidence is not the same as being arrogant or cocky. There's a big difference. Arrogance is when a person believes they're better than others or they have an exaggerated sense of importance. They don't ask for opinions or help because they think they know everything and they don't need it. Self-confidence is not that. Self-confident people know their strengths, but they also know their weaknesses. They know they sometimes need help and they're not afraid to ask for it. I think self-confidence is particularly important for young women. There will be enough people in your life and in your career who will doubt your abilities. Don't doubt yourself first. Advocate for yourself. Push back. You're not always going to know what you're doing, but be brave enough to give it a try. What does self-confidence look like in college? Real self-confidence means realizing you can't do it alone. It's when you're applying for an internship and you think your application looks pretty good, but you make an appointment with your advisor to go over it with you because you know they've done this a lot more than you have, and they might be able to help you make it a little bit better. It's when you think your marketing project is finished, but you go ahead and make an appointment with your professor and ask if he or she has any suggestions before you present it. It's when you're at an event like this one and you go up to people you don't know and you introduce yourself, even if it's really hard for you. You shake hands firmly, you look them in the eye, and you speak up. You are getting a great education here, and your EKU degree can take you wherever you want to go, but you are driving the bus. Don't just sit back and expect it to happen magically. It won't. You must advocate for yourself, network, and engage. An example of self-confidence is another name you know, J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. Rowling went to the University of Exeter in England, studying classics and French. She always wanted to be a writer, and she thought she had talent. After university, she worked a lot of odd jobs so that she could focus on her writing. She moved to Portugal, where she married and had a child. And she started working on what would become the first book in the Harry Potter series. She had completed just 3 chapters when her marriage was falling apart, and she fled with her daughter to Scotland, where she had a sister. She had nowhere else to go because her mother had passed away and she didn't have a relationship with her father. She slept on her sister's couch for a while, and she went on welfare. She said she was as poor as she could be in Britain without being homeless. She finished the first Harry Potter book, The Philosopher's Stone, and she submitted it to a publisher. It was rejected. She submitted it to another publisher. Again, it was rejected. But she had enough self-confidence in her ability to continue to submit the book to publishers. She submitted The Philosopher's Stone to 12 different publishers, and it was rejected 12 times. The Philosopher's Stone was finally bought by a small publishing house, and they paid her £1,500 as an advance. That's about $2,000. They said because they didn't believe a children's book could make any money. Well, apparently they were wrong, and children's books do make money because the 7 Harry Potter books have sold over 600 million copies and been translated into 84 languages. They've also been made into movies, which are quite enjoyable. I'm sure you guys have seen some of them. J.K. Rowling is now the richest author in the world. All of us who like the Harry Potter series are glad that J.K. Rowling had enough self-confidence to keep on trying and to get published. Maybe one of you here today will start the next great American company. Think Steve Jobs and Apple. Or maybe one of you will create an app that will change our lives. Think Instagram or TikTok. But you must expect rejection along the way and continue to go about working on your dreams and be self-confident. Okay, great. So I've talked your head up about me, what I believe to be the 3 key factors of success, and people who are examples of each. What do I want you to take away from here today? I want you to be encouraged and proud of where you are right now. The definition of courage is to come alongside someone and press courage into them. I love that image of physically pressing courage. And I want to press courage into each of you. I know you're going into the end of your semester. You only have a couple more weeks, and you have exams, projects, and papers due. I want to press courage in you to give it your best shot, and don't just skate through the end of the semester, even if you can. You might surprise yourself at how well you do. Some of you may think that what you want to do seems impossible. You don't know anyone who's ever done it, so how could you? You might think, I should just choose an easier major or just give up. I want to press courage into you to say that if you can dream it, you can do it. Don't sell yourself short and give up on your dream. There may be a couple of you here today who aren't sure you're coming back in the fall. Maybe you feel overwhelmed and dropping out seems like the only way. I want to press courage into you. Do not quit. Do whatever it takes to return to Eastern in the fall and get your degree. Some of you may be graduating, well, actually a lot of you, in a few weeks. Maybe you don't have any idea of what the next step is or how you'll get a job. Maybe you think you should know exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life right now, but you don't. By the way, you shouldn't know that. But I want to press courage into each of you to have confidence that your Eastern education has prepared you to enter the work world. Cast a wide net and apply and interview for jobs, even that you don't think you're qualified for. You'll gain experience in the process, and you will get a job offer. Finally, I want to leave you with the wise words of Christopher Robin to his best friend, Winnie the Pooh. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Each of you is brave and strong and smart. Always remember that, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Thank you for attending today.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That was fantastic. And I think that's why that I wanted you to speak to our students and our faculty today, because Suzanne, what you talked about perfectly encapsulates the EKU experience. Is that I'm going to pick on JP Stearns because I saw him on the way up. There is no, for those of you who are accounting majors or that you have accounting, and this goes for every professor here in the College of Business, but every professor in the at EKU, there is no professor anywhere else in the world that knows more than your professor about the topic that they're teaching. You are being prepared adequately to go and compete, like you said, at Columbia. That you have the skill, you have the knowledge, you have the ability that has been imbued to you, that has been given to you. You've worked for it, but it requires hard work, it requires perseverance, and it requires that confidence. And so that's why this is a message, an important message that I'm so glad that you were able to give to them today, because every one of you in this room can go and be, you can do whatever you want to. There is no limit to what you can do, but nobody's going to give it to you. You've got to go work for it. You've got to overcome a rejection. The J.K. Rowling thing, the 12 rejections. There's an author, I was trying to remember the name, 37 rejections before they finally got it. You're going to have people tell you no over and over again. Your professors are going to tell you no, right? You turn in a paper, they'll say, wow, thank goodness this student has solved the problem that we were trying to. No, there are comments, right? Embrace those. That's what Suzanne was talking. Embrace those comments. How can I improve your 16 weeks, your semester, your 4 years, graduate school if you choose to do it? This is a laboratory of experimentation for you to work hard, to persevere, and to have that confidence to be successful. One of the things that you talked about when you went to Columbia, and talk a little bit about when you got to Columbia and how you were received there as a young woman from Kentucky. I'm assuming that there was some. Well, what do we have here?
Well, yes. I mean, there was nobody else there from Kentucky. Very few from the South in general. Most people from Northeast part of the United States or California. So I did feel very much out of my element, and people were, nice, but they weren't that interested in me or what I had to say, frankly.
Could they understand what you had to say?
Well, yeah, that was one thing. And I think I shared with you in one of the first exchanges, when you're in law school, you have big classes like this, 100, 120 students. And it's called the Socratic method. And the professor will just call on you and say, you answer this question, right? It's very intimidating. And I remember very early on that happened to me, and I was absolutely terrified. And I answered the question to my best of my ability. And several people came up to me later, and they're like, wow, you did a good job. And I said, oh, and I said to my roommate, one of my roommates, I don't think what I said was that exceptional. I think they just expected me to say something that wasn't good at all. So like their expectations were so low that I just blew that out of the water. So, I felt like I had to prove myself early and often. Let me just say that.
Your talk about your friend, the doctor who was caught.
Dr. Allen. Yeah.
Was caught trying.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
You may fail, but you're never going to be penalized for being caught trying at different times. And I think that's so powerful for our students, that networking piece. I mean, you've got 4 friends here that you've had for, I won't say how many years because we don't want to do that,
well,
but I mean, for a long time.
Decades.
But that networking
the fact that I
piece.
said Telford was new, these people know how old that must be. So,
But talk a little bit more about, it's not networking just for the sake of transactional. It can be transactional, but networking also is transformational. You got 4 friends here that are lifelong friends. The professors that invested in you. Talk a little bit more about that power of that networking.
Well, it's really important, and I think you don't realize how important it is until later in life, because things will start to run into each other. it's a small world actually when you get out there, and especially when you go in the business world. And so you do want to network, whether it's in your classmates right now in your major or when you start your first job. And you have to be willing to put yourself out there. A professor, your employer says, okay, I need somebody to do something. You do it. Don't sit back. Don't wait. You do it. You will get some notice for that, but more importantly, you will learn by doing those things. And then they'll say, oh, you know what, so and so did something. Hey, maybe you should do something. And then you'll network and you'll meet other people. And it really will. One thing will lead to the other. But you do have to, as I said, drive the bus. You can't just sit back and think things are going to happen to you on their own.
And the tools that these young people have at their disposal for networking are so much better than what we had.
Oh my gosh!
Now,
yeah.
If I wanted to go and meet someone in a dorm, I had to actually go to the dorm, right? You had to go to Walters.
Yes.
You had to go to Telford.
Yes.
Or you had to call the main line, and they had to be switched or whatever.
Exactly.
But students today, young people today, have the world at their fingertips. They have the networking capacity at their fingertips. But yet this generation seems to be more alone and more disconnected as a group. I mean, some of you out there are very connected, but how do they start using those tools more effectively?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think you have to realize that all the tools you have are great. And believe me, and our children always say to us, how did you ever even find your way anywhere? And I sometimes can't hardly remember. We'd have to have like an actual big Rand McNally Atmos or something. But, it can't only be that. I think there's no substitute for interaction with your classmates, with your friends, with people you don't know. And I think sometimes if you go and you're eating, but you're like this on your phone and they're like this, you're not getting to know people. You're not sharing experiences. So I guess I would say, and we always do this with our own kids, like at the dinner table, no electronics. Like when you go somewhere and you sit down and eat or something, put your phone away. Maybe somebody else will too, and they'll talk to you and you'll get to know them. And there's no substitute for that. Texting is not the same as talking. It may seem like it. And sometimes you think, oh, I talked to so-and-so. No, you really didn't. You texted them. So have a conversation and just make that a part of it. I mean, it could be novel. You could be to say, hey, let's go out and let's not have our phones out. And you'll both feel like it's kind of weird and you may feel you're a little undressed or something, but you don't have your phone. But you will get more out of your interactions, I think, personally, than you will electronically.
Part of perseverance is curiosity.
Oh.
And that notion of lifelong learning. And these students, when they graduate from here, the learning does not end, it begins.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about how curiosity played in your success and continuing to learn beyond what was required or beyond law school, continuing that even up to today.
Well, I think it's important to be curious, and that takes a lot of different ways of being curious. I think one way I would strongly suggest that you all are curious about the world around you, not just your own campus, your own family, to know what's going on in the world. And I think to do that, you have to have a news source or sources that are trustworthy and that you read regularly. And I know I asked you whether the students have access to, say, the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. They have the Wall Street Journal?
They've got access to the New York Times. We're getting university access to the Wall Street Journal.
Okay. So those are gold standard sources of news. And there are other ones, obviously, as well. But those are gold standards, not just in this country, but in the world. Anyway, on the New York Times one that you do apparently have access to, there's something every day called the headlines. It's an audio, usually 7 or 8 minutes. I don't know if you can, like I have the app on my phone. I don't know if you can get the New York Times app on your all's phones. If you do that, like when I'm just walking, I will listen every day during the week to the headlines, 7 or 8 minutes. It'll tell you what's going on in the world. You don't have to invest lots of time. But if you want to know more, you can go on the app and you can read more. But I think you have to be a citizen of not just your college and your state, but of your country and the world. And the only way you do that is to inform yourself, to be curious, but to actually act on it. I also think another way to be curious is to read books that are not related to school. It could be novels of any kind, just for pleasure, like pleasure reading. Have a book, and maybe it takes you a whole semester to read it because you just read a couple pages before bed and you go to sleep. But I think reading and broadening your mind is a way to be curious. And lastly, I think travel is so important. And like, I didn't even have a passport until I was 28 years old, and we were going on our honeymoon. And traveling the world, you will meet people completely different from you in many ways, but yet you'll find out so many similarities, and you will learn and grow by doing that as well.
So reading, you mentioned reading. So who are some of your favorite authors and some books that you recommend?
Well, one of my favorite authors is a woman by the name of Geraldine Brooks, who's written a lot of great books. Actually, one of her most recent one was called Horse, and it takes place in Lexington, Kentucky. I think it came out a couple of years ago. So Geraldine Brooks is one. How many years? 3 years ago it came out. Anyway, I like also a woman named Isabel Allende. She's Chilean, and I just think her writing is fantastic. There's a great Kentucky author named Barbara Kingsolver, very famous. And she has her most recent book. No, that's old. I'm talking about
Demon Copperhead.
Yeah, Demon Copperhead is her most recent book, but she wrote one years ago called The Poisonwood Bible, which is so good. But anyway, I like all those authors. So
Hard work, perseverance, confidence. Questions from the students? Have any questions? Yes, sir.
What was your first position after law school, and how did that help shape your career?
Thank you. Great question. My first position at that time, and I think it's still true, when you were in law school at Columbia, and my husband went to Harvard, the law firms came and recruited on campus. So we were recruited pretty heavily. My first job was in New York City at a law firm. And so it wasn't that hard at that point, frankly, to get a job. Once you got in the job, you had to keep it because there was a lot of pressure to perform, to bill hours. That's the way that they get paid, is by billing out your time. And so that was my first job. And I was 25.
Good question. Other questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever mentored someone? And if so, what did that look like?
You know, I never have mentored someone. I wasn't ever, certainly in college, we didn't have it. I mean, I guess I was somewhat mentored a little when we were at the law firms, but and maybe I did informally mentor young attorneys, informally, but not like a formal mentor where we met regularly and had expectations.
I think there's a bunch of people that would say you were their mentor. It just wasn't an official.
Well, I guess, maybe, but not in an official capacity, So
Mentoring is important as young students come into the workplace, but it's also important when you're deep into your profession, is to have people that are going through the same things that you are. Wouldn't that be correct?
I think that's true. And it's very valuable to have someone, especially if they're maybe a little ahead of you, and you can see what they're doing, what they've done, and then you can ask questions. Say you're in your first job. Oh, well, when you were in my position, what did you do, or what would you do differently? What do you wish you had done? And you can kind of glean information like that, and so that you can benefit from their experience.
A couple hands over here. Yes, sir.
Why did you choose Columbia, not UK?
Well, as I said, UK is a good law school, but the reason I chose Columbia, it was a much more well-known school, and it would give me more opportunities to work nationally wherever I wanted to. Like coming out of there, if I wanted to go to, as I said, they came and recruited us. So you could go basically anywhere in the country to basically any firm in the country. And I knew that I wanted to, at that point in my life, I was 25 when I graduated, and I wasn't married. I would have gone anywhere. It was the same with law school. I would have gone to the best law school I had gotten into. It did not matter to me where it was. and because I had no ties. And for me, that was worth it. And it did prove that I could work really wherever I wanted. Just as one pitch for anybody who might be interested in law school here. The thing about going to law school is that when you get to law school, everybody has different majors. I mean, there was this one young man I remember so well, and he was an organ major from the University of Arkansas. And there was a doctor in my class, and there were all these people. And so you get this kind of pool of people with all these different backgrounds, and then you can do whatever you want. You can work at a law firm, you can work at a corporation, you can work at a not-for-profit, you can create your own company and become an entrepreneur. You can do a lot of things, but that's why. So Columbia gave me more opportunities because I did not know where I wanted to live or what I wanted to do, and I knew that it would give me the best chance.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you talk a little bit more about the differences in the coursework from your undergraduate to law school?
Well, law school is it's a very different type of learning. As I said, it's very kind of big classrooms, and you get called on all the time. It was more high pressure because it was almost like turning up the heat, in water. Like everything had gotten more intense. The students, my classmates in law school, very intense people for the most part, because they had done the best at their colleges all across the country. And then everybody's kind of competing now to again be the top in a school where we kind of were used to doing really, really well. And suddenly now you're with people and everybody's used to doing really well. So you had to increase your increase workload and step up your game. So it was competitive. Yeah.
Another question. Yes, sir. Yes,
One,
sir.
would you still recommend law school today? And two, what would you suggest for people interested that are undergrad right now that they can do to help them stand out and get accepted, maybe have a better chance of getting accepted at certain schools?
I would definitely still recommend it. I've recommended it to all of our children, and none of them so far have done it. But Professor Four would be a really good person to talk to about that. But the reason I would recommend it is that I think from it you can do so many different things. Even after you get your law degree, then you don't have to be a lawyer. As a matter of fact, I hardly have any friends that are still lawyers, and most of them left pretty quickly. They do it for a few years, and then it's a stepping stone to other things. And even in my own life, when I stopped practicing, and then when I went back into the work world, I wasn't in the work world as a lawyer. I was in a business setting as a chief administrative officer, and then then our company got acquired, and my job got outsourced to Cleveland. So I had nothing. I had to figure out what to do and kind of reinvent myself, but they needed somebody to do real estate work. So I'm like, okay, I don't know how, but I can do it. I can do it. So it was a really steep learning curve. And I would recommend you do it in college. I would say to get the best grades possible, really good grades, but more than grades too, you also have to have outside activities. You have to be involved in different things on campus, and you have to give back. You can't just have great grades and have done nothing else. And I don't know, what would you say, Professor Four? Anything else besides really good grades and extracurriculars?
I think that's it. And, I think a lot of the, in terms of preparing for law school admission, I think all the things you mentioned, I think a lot of the things that we talk about here in business school in terms of an entrepreneurial mindset, or being self-starting on things, are all good skills that will serve you well when you go to that environment to be able to succeed. And, like you mentioned, networking, I don't think you can ever discount that's anywhere.
Dr. Engel.
You're at a certain point in your life, and you would be what anybody in this room would identify as very successful on a whole range of levels.
Thank you.
Why development first? Why are you willing to pick up responsibilities? And is it a contract that you're trying to conclude? Is it a love? Is it Is it the right thing to do? Is it altruistic? Why do you want to contribute to keeping whatever Eastern did for you for that 4 years alive into the future? Is it legacy? Have you thought about this?
No, I really haven't, but thank you. That's a wonderful question, and I'd like to even think about it and process it more. But the reason I'm involved with the foundation board is I really believe that education changes lives. It can change anybody's life. And to get a 4-year degree, I think you, at a minimum, you need a 4-year degree in your life these days. And for many of you, I would think you should maybe consider grad school, but you definitely need a 4-year degree. And I want to help to raise money so that Eastern can help more deserving students come here and get that opportunity. Education is opportunity. And I really believe that any of you in here could do anything you want. I have a strong belief in people who are from our area. There's no reason we can't do anything, but we need education. And to get an education, you have to pay for an education. You also have to be aware of the value of the education. And that's what I was saying earlier about when I was growing up. Nobody talked about the value of an education. If you were a smart kid, nobody talked about that. If you were a good athlete, everybody knew your name. That was all that mattered. And that just drives me crazy to this day because I don't like to see talent wasted. And I think there is so much that our students can do given the tools, and I want to help get more money so we can get more students here. The thought of a smart person not going to college because they can't afford it, or they're just not getting support to do that. That is so sad to me. There used to be this ad on television called "The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Waste." The mind is a terrible thing to waste. And so we want to be able to have our students come and not have too much debt if we can help it, and have opportunity. So anyway, thank you for that question.
One last question. All right, let's thank Suzanne Fawbush for today. Thank you.